Hello, football fans. This is Anthony coming back at you with Two Fat Guys Fantasy Football. Uh, Today we're going to be taking a look at the offseason breakdown for the Arizona Cardinals. So as always, let's jump right into it and see where they were at the end of the season. Uh, we're going to assume that everybody's healthy for this one because we know there's some issues with that. But coming into the offseason, they were kind of in a decent spot. Their roster was better than it performed last year. Um, they, Almost everybody expected them to be better than they were. Kyler Murray is, of course, the quarterback. He has his ups, he has his downs. He can be electric with the ball in his hands, but there's been some questions around his leadership and his maturity, and I don't know. He's kind of a polarizing player. I think he's a good player. I think he brings a lot of unique skills to the table, but I'm not sure that he has that it factor that you're necessarily always looking for in a quarterback. The wide receiver room at the end of the season, we had, of course, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, and Chosen Anderson. Um, Speed all around. They also have Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch, as well as the longtime veteran AJ Green at the end of the season. So the wide receiver room has a lot of talent. One guy I really like a lot is Rondale Moore. I think he is somebody that could take the next step and really help out a lot in this offense. James Conner is the lead running back here. Say what you want about James Conner, he continues to be productive. He was productive in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh let him go, signed with Arizona, and has continued to be productive. He's a just he just gets it done. Their offensive line was in a pretty good spot. Some youth, some talent, a good veteran leader in Rodney Hudson. Unfortunately, Hudson didn't have the year that he expected. He only played in, I think, 4 games last year, but uh, just unfortunately wasn't able to be the guy that he had been in years past. Their tight end room is interesting. Zach Ertz, longtime veteran now at this stage. He's a good player and is a good, again, kind of intermediate guy, short route guy. Kind of catches everything that's thrown his way. They did invest in the position in the last draft with Trey McBride. Trey McBride is a guy that I really have a lot of hope for. He's an easy guy to root for. He's a good guy. Brings some speed to the position. Brings some blocking to the position. He is a very, very well-rounded tight end that could be a guy that really makes that next step in this coming year. He's a guy that if you're looking for uh, a tight end in your fantasy drafts that might be available a little bit later, he's a guy that I would be looking to target. Um, but overall, their offense is full of playmakers, but unfortunately just didn't get the job done. Um, on defense, defense also is a spot where they kind of underperformed. I mean, that's really all that you can say about this team last year is they had talent, they just underperformed. J.J. Watt came back for another year, and he played about how you would expect J.J. Watt to play. He was a good, solid defender on the line, gave some pass rush capabilities, good run stopper, just overall what you expected of him. The biggest star for me on this defense is Buda Baker. Buda Baker is uh, cut from that same cloth as a Jamal Adams type in that he can do everything that you ask out of that safety position. He's a big hitter. He's a good cover guy. He plays the run well. He makes a lot of tackles. He's um, all around just an incredibly quality safety. On the other side in the safety room, we have Jalen Thompson. Jalen Thompson is still very young in the league. He's still improving, and he is more than an adequate safety across from Buda Baker. He gives them a very formidable set back there. Uh, Their linebackers are really, really interesting. Isaiah Simmons is kind of a chess piece. He can be a safety, he can be a linebacker. He lines up really all over the place. They also drafted Zaven Collins a couple years ago. Zaven Collins is an interesting player as well. Both of these guys bring a ton of speed to the center of that defense. Both are relatively good cover guys. Both are good tacklers. I think Collins is a little bit better tackler than Simmons, but interesting pieces here. They give them a lot of unique little moves that they can make on defense to confuse opposing offenses. Unfortunately, opposing offenses weren't confused last year. I think a lot of that is due to the coaching, which the coaching has changed, and we'll see what happens now. On the other side of the D line, Zach Allen was great. Fotu is still improving. He's an interesting D tackle. He's a good anchor for a 3-4. Um, he could be better as a tackler, could be better as a run stopper, but he is a guy that can eat up double teams with his size. Your cornerback room was led by Byron Murphy Jr. Byron Murphy Jr. was a guy I liked a lot coming out of college, and he did show signs of improvement each year, but he never took that real big step that I think uh, a lot of us were hoping. Coming out, he was always a better zone corner than a man corner. That's what he was uh, primarily used for. Same holds true in the NFL. He's a better zone corner than man corner, um, but he's not a liability in man coverage either. The rest of their cornerback room was questionable. Young, but just not great. Some guys that we hope can take the next steps, but it's definitely a position that I could see them addressing in the near future. So that's just a quick look at where they were at the end of the season. And this is a team that has undergone a lot of changes, one of the most changeover of any of the teams that we've looked at so far. Um, so let's take a look at what the roster looks like now as free agency has progressed and we're getting closer to the NFL draft. Um, the offensive line has changed quite a bit. Rodney Hudson is no longer there. Um, Will Hernandez, they're just a lot weaker than they were across the interior. Having Rodney Hudson, if he could have been healthy, I think would have helped a lot of some of their offensive issues last year, but unfortunately it wasn't the case. So this is another team that I think will address the interior of the offensive line somehow, either in the draft or in free agency, to bring somebody in for competition for bodies. Of course, Kyler Murray is still Kyler Murray. Rehab seems to be going well. He's already throwing, so his rehab looks to be on pace. So that's a good sign for the Cardinals. The wide receiver room still is led by DeAndre Hopkins. He has yet to be traded. I think that's a foregone conclusion that he will be traded at some point. It's just going to be a matter of what compensation they're able to get back for him. Um, they've been asking for a package similar to what was given up for Christian McCaffrey, and they're not going to get that. Unfortunately, the wide receiver market this offseason is a little bit depressed. Brandon Cooks was just traded for uh, a fifth round and a sixth round pick. His contract was fairly equally as prohibitive as Hopkins. Hopkins is due over $19 million this year. He's an older wide receiver. Um, they were wanting a lot for him. I think kind of a reasonable price tag that you could ask for him would be like a third rounder and a fourth rounder, because he is a better player than Brandon Cooks, but um, maybe a fourth rounder that could be a third rounder if he hits certain milestones. But that's the compensation that I think they should be expecting for him. So that leaves Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore. They brought in Zach Pascal. Zach Pascal is a good signing for them. He is a good receiver. He's going to fit in very well in this room and really help that offense out quite a bit. Auden Tate is another guy that um, brings a unique element. He's a big jump ball threat guy. Do think he gets some run in this offense as well to bring something different that the other guys aren't going to have. James Conner is still the lead running back, and say what you want to about Conner. Like I said, he is a productive running back. Interesting name for me is Keontae Ingram. Um, I liked him last year coming out. I didn't like the landing spot with the Cardinals, but he's an interesting player, and I think he's a guy that if he has progressed this offseason, he's a guy that could push James Conner for some touches. Corey Clement, Williams, just guys. On the defensive side of the ball, this has been they've taken a lot of hits. J.J. Watt retired. That hurts their offensive line. They haven't really brought in anybody to replace them across that front. They lost Byron Murphy Jr., leading Marco Wilson to lead the cornerback room. Brought in nobody else to help out. Buda Baker is still the star of the show. They're going to have to find a way to build around him being a centerpiece guy. But just kind of looking at him, and I know Madden ratings aren't the best way to do this, but it's an easy way to kind of get an overview. He's like I said, he does everything well. He's exactly what you want in a cornerstone piece. So they're going to have to surround him with some talent. Again, the linebacker core led by Collins and Simmons is unique in what it can do, but they need help there as well. This is a team that unfortunately can't be ultra active in free agency due to some poor contract language in previous years, but they're going to have to do something. This cannot be the roster that they go in with. Um, they are the third overall pick in the draft, and they are actively shopping that. And I think there are going to be some buyers there. Um, so they're a team that intrigues me quite a bit in the draft. So if they trade out of 3, I don't think they're going to have to trade back very far. There are going to be a few teams that are picking higher than they expect to be picking in the future that are going to want to jump the Indianapolis Colts to get a quarterback because for my money, I don't think that there's any way that the Colts are not taking a quarterback unless they trade for Lamar Jackson. That's the only way that I could see that being a situation where they don't draft a quarterback. They need a quarterback desperately. They cannot go into the season with Nick Foles and Sam Ehlinger as their starters. So the Cardinals do not need a quarterback. Obviously, Kyler Murray is the guy. They just paid him last year. So they're not in the quarterback business. So a team that's looking to trade up, there are a couple teams I think in the trade in that would like to jump the Colts to get either C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson. Um, as I'm recording this, Anthony Richardson's pro day is just a few hours away. So we'll learn a lot more about him and see a lot more about who's interested in him as the day wears on. So, like I said, I think C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson are going to be the guy that's available. And I think you've got a team in the Seattle Seahawks, who I talked about in our last video, being a team that would be interested to move up just 2 spots to get one of those guys. Now, with the Cardinals just moving back 2 spots, they're still to get their choice of the best defensive player on the board. Um, they have holes all over their defense. Whoever the best player on their board is who they need to take, whether that be Will Anderson Jr., whether that be Jalen Carter, whether that be Christian Gonzalez. All of those guys are in play, as is, I think, where is he? Uh, let's see, Tyree Wilson. I don't know why I didn't see him on the list before, but Tyree Wilson is another guy that potentially is in play for that number 1 defensive spot. So they could go any number of directions with that pick. For me, I think it's Will Anderson Jr. Will Anderson Jr. is um, if not the best player in the draft, one of the best players in the draft. You could make the case that Bijan Robinson is the best player in the draft, but the positional value is just not there to take a running back this high. So let's take a look at some of these top defensive guys and see uh, what they're going to be looking at. So with Will Anderson Jr., he's young, he's fast, he's strong, he fits any defense. Whether you're going to run a 4-3 or a 3-4, he's a rush outside player no matter what you do. He was incredibly impactful in college, and that everything that I see on tape translate extremely well into the NFL game. I think his best fit is as a 3-4 outside linebacker. I think that's where he is going to be the most effective. But I don't. Scheme is not going to be dependent on that for him. He's going to be effective as a down lineman, a 4-3 end, or a 3-4 outside linebacker. Jalen Carter is another guy. They could absolutely use him as a 3-4 end, as a 3-4 nose. He could fit in either of those spots. Again, he's a guy that athletically is as gifted as any tackle, defensive tackle that we've seen in several years. In a lot of classes, he would be kind of the consensus number one overall player, but unfortunately, there's quite a bit of talent around him this year that makes that argument a little harder to make. He also has some off the field concerns. A lot of his landing spot is going to depend on his team interviews. Nothing's really coming out whether he's bombing those interviews, which is usually a good sign. That usually means that he's doing well in the interviews. Tyree Wilson, he is an athletic, just he's a monster. His wingspan, his athleticism that he shows on tape. We haven't seen him test yet due to some medical concerns, but he will have a pro day coming up here pretty soon, and we'll get to take a look at how he tests out compared to some of these other guys. But just based off the information that we have and the tape that I've been able to watch, he's another guy that is absolutely in play. And again, he's kind of a scheme dependent guy. I think for him is the opposite of Will Anderson. His best spot would be as a 4-3 end, but I think he could play 3-4 outside linebacker as well. Either way is going to be fine. And then Christian Gonzalez is a guy that if you're a betting man, run out, place a bet on Christian Gonzalez being the first defensive player off the board. His odds are starting to creep up, so you might want to get in early before it becomes kind of a less attractive bet. But Christian Gonzalez is a cornerback out of Oregon who is very, very interesting. He's long, he's rangy. His coverage skills are adequate, better in man than zone from what I've seen. But he's still very, very good in both ways for a rookie. Is he as good as Sauce Gardner? No, he's not going to come in and have that kind of an impact. I don't think. Um, but he's still going to be very good. He's going to come in, and if it's the Cardinals that take him, he will be by far their best corner right away. He's going to be the guy that you put on the other team's best receiver. He just does so many things well. So those are some of those guys, but the Cardinals have a lot of holes. I think kind of what we're looking at is going to be more like your middle round, your day two kind of guys, and there's a lot of help needed. So with those top picks in the second round, again, corner I think is probably where they go in the second round, with guys like Keely Ringo, Emmanuel Forbes being there. Um, Again, Adab, Adab, I'm going to butcher this name till the end of time. The kid from Northwestern is a guy for me that I honestly don't expect him to be there in the second round now. The more I watch him, the more I think he has kind of everything that teams are looking for in that three technique. BJ Ojulari is an interesting name. He is, again, another rush end. He's definitely fits the mold of a 3-4 outside linebacker. Uh, if they take Will Anderson in first, they could absolutely double dip and go Ojulari in the second. I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't hate that at all. Um, Keon White is another interesting name for me. The more I watch of him, the more I really like him. He's a player that, while he didn't show necessarily a ton of real elite skills at Georgia Tech, part of that is he was at Georgia Tech. But you watch the tape and he does what he is supposed to do to win. And he is a guy that continues to get better, and he shows a lot of skill coming out. I think he's a really good player that's going to have a really good career. For him, he is a 4-3 end. That's where he fits. He's going to set the edge very well. He's going to do what you need him to do. Um, so at safety, they don't need. Trenton Simpson is another name that we haven't really touched on the channel yet. Trenton Simpson, for me, is an interesting player. Um, he played at Clemson, and that's why he's interesting to me. He had guys in front of him that are elite first round talents, Breesy and Murphy, which freed him up to do a lot of things. So I'm not sure if what we see on tape from him is a result of the guys around him and just being flooded with too much talent, and that just let him run a little freer, or if it's just he's that talented. So he's an interesting name. He's a guy that I'm digging into a little bit more because I want to know more. I think he's could be an interesting piece for a team, but I'm not completely sold on him yet. Um, so those are some names. Interior line we talked about a little bit already. Whippler, Schmitz, Tippmann, all guys. Another guy that could be interesting for them would be Mozzie Smith um, or Siaki Ika. Both of these guys kind of fit that nose tackle mode that they would need to kind of just upgrade from Fotu. Mozzie Smith was a great player at Michigan. He was uh, incredibly impactful on one of the best defenses in college football last year. He's going to come in and provide a lot of strength at the point of attack. He's going to free up the guys behind him to run a little freer. The same can be said with Ika out of Baylor. A little stronger, not quite as agile as Mozzie, but very similar players, and I think both have opportunities to be very good. So that's just kind of a quick look at the Arizona Cardinals. They're a team that needs a lot of help. I expect them to be more active in the veteran free agency as uh, as the draft concludes and we know more about what their final needs are going to be. You're going to see some guys with 1 year deals, kind of veteran minimum with incentive kind of contracts coming in, because the Cardinals just need that an infusion of depth, because the roster that they have now, um, they're definitely in play for the number one overall pick next year. I hope it's not true. I would like to see every team succeed, but the Cardinals definitely need some help. And as always, once the draft happens, we will revisit all of these team breakdown videos, kind of go through what was done in the draft, and start talking about some fantasy outlooks for some of the players. Um, but for now, that's going to be it for me, guys. I appreciate every single one of you. Please feel free to comment with any feedback that you have. If there's a team that you want me to do, if there's a player you think I missed, somebody you want me to dig into a little deeper, please let me know. I'm open to all of that. I'm here to help. I want to learn from you just as much as I want to provide what information that I have and try to enrich your knowledge base a little bit more as well. But that's it for me. We'll be coming back at you soon with the next of our team breakdown videos, and I'm open to suggestions. But for now, thanks and have a great day.